Are you navigating the intricate world of cloud computing and all its associated costs with intrepidation, maybe even extreme caution? Well, welcome to the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where we dive deep into the realms of technology and its real-world applications. I'm your host, Neil, and today we're unraveling the complexities of cloud computing costs with our exceptional guest, Claire Milligan. She's the CEO of Aimably, and we're going to venture into the fog of hidden cloud costs, exploring how companies often find themselves overcharged for services that they scarcely use. And we'll also delve into the art of unveiling customer pain points through a designer's mindset, a crucial skill in today's rapidly shifting market landscape. But moreover, we'll also dissect the dangers of over-provisioning in the cloud, a scenario akin to paying for a feast, but only nibbling on the appetizers. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to California, where Claire is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Claire Milligan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a business named Aimably. We work together with our clients to help them understand, predict, control their cloud spend. So that would be any spend on Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure.
Awesome. And I would imagine in the current climate on both sides of the pond, controlling your cloud spend is going to be of huge significance to people listening everywhere in the world. So can you explain how businesses often end up overcharged in cloud services and some of the common hidden costs that maybe they should be aware of?
Sure. We actually divide it into kind of three general groups. I'm going to start by demystifying the first one that we actually don't include in there, and that is re-architecting how their software works. There's always a better way to write the way your software works to make it run more efficiently on infrastructure. But that's a huge job. So it's not what we come in to do or to recommend or even think that that's a way that you're getting overcharged, because fundamentally you've got a cost to run what you have right now. And when we think about you as a business and helping our customers run the way they want to run, they need to be able to continue and have business continuity with what they have in the cloud already. So understanding that we're not talking about re-architecture at all, the three ways that we find that people get to be spending too much is waste, excess, and what we call failure to optimize. So waste would be anything that's running that they purely just don't know why or don't need or don't have any use for. That can happen with evolving teams, mergers and acquisitions, pure hidden items because of it being in a different region or a different account that you just don't see. Permissions. My favorite one was actually a client that had a bunch of capacity reservations running on Microsoft Azure, which is basically holding space for compute. And that was in an account where they had absolutely no workloads running. So they were just paying for it, but it wasn't visible in the console. Then you've got what we call excess, which is a complete purposeful thing, which is that developers and cloud service teams for many years have been incentivized by uptime and performance. So you always buffer and you always provide more capacity than what you're going to need so that you don't get woken up in the middle of the night. But in truth, we'll see things that are provisioned like 12x large and you're only using the utilization of maybe like a 4x large. And so you really don't need all of that. And there's a lot of ways in which excess can fit in a lot of different services. And then the third is failure to optimize, which can be really challenging because nobody wants to tackle tech debt necessarily. But what I'm talking about is like upgrading all of the versions of your operating systems and your scripts and all of the code bases underneath. So you can take advantage of something like now in AWS, they have an IOPS inclusive pricing model for Aurora, as opposed to a non-IOPS inclusive model. And if you've got heavy IOPS operations, you can save thousands every month if you just make that change, but you've got to upgrade in order to do it.
So much gold in your answer there. And I find it quite amusing. If you go back in time 15 years and went in any on-premises data center, there was always one server somewhere that, hey, nobody knows what it does, but we just leave it on. And I thought we'd got rid of that when we went on it.
Yeah, the post-it says, do not turn off. And you're like, I don't know. Okay.
But even though we've gone to the cloud, that problem still exists, right?
Oh, absolutely. We see those tags all the time. Do not turn off. And we're like, well, there's no utilization on this for the last 2 years, so I think we can.
That's just crazy. We've probably set off a few alarm bells and light bulb moments in people listening anywhere in the world. And maybe business leaders on that commute to work thinking, you know what, maybe we could cut some costs here or save some money. So what steps should companies take to assess and ensure that they are only paying for the cloud services that they actually need?
Sure. I hate to say it, but there's no magic wand. There are a bunch of low-hanging fruits, and each of the services offer very clear guidance to those low-hanging fruits. So you can turn on like Compute Optimizer, or there's all kinds of ways that you can go through and, they'll give you a checklist. There are add-on software programs that will give you a couple more items on that checklist, and you can run through and make the change, like upgrading your disk volumed operating system, for instance. However, once you do that, the next step that you're encouraged to take is to get yourself into contracts, which would be like buying a reservation or a savings plan or committing to an enterprise discount program. Unfortunately, most of the time we commit to too much when we do that. So my recommendation is you have to find a time when you actually are going to go in and truly assess what's going on, get down and dirty with the data, break out either your own ability to query your data into like Amazon Athena or BigQuery or something like that, or hire somebody like us, or there are others out there as well, to triangulate cost, configuration, and utilization. And once you start triangulating those, you can start to identify and chart ways that you can reduce or even configure with a different pricing model. After that, that's when we would encourage you to go for contracts.
And before you came on the podcast, I was doing a little research on you and I was learning about your design background. And I'm curious, how did that design background help you approach identifying and addressing the specific pain points of your potential customers? Because I would imagine you picked up some unique skill sets there to help you in this role.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, and even before design, I did a master's degree in survey research and ballots. And so really understanding what people are thinking and collecting what people are thinking in the most appropriate way is really important, because you can lead yourself down incredibly wrong tracks as an entrepreneur or product manager just by getting confirmation for the ideas that you think are amazing. So it's all about, for me, how you ask the question.
Yeah.
You need to prime somebody into the position of answering based on how they would go about their daily life. So let's use an example of designing the best desk, for working. You're going to say, okay, I want you to think about being in your office. I want you to sit down and think about it. Where do you reach for? What do you do when you're in your space? So you get them thinking about it. And then the next step, instead of saying, how can I make this better? Your next job is to master, what do they do in their real life now? So how are they going through all of their processes that they normally do? And there's always one or two that are those sticky, unsolved problems that they just kind of halfway solve. And they don't go all the way because they can't. And so that's where you can actually create innovation, is you take the opportunity to solve those unsolvable problems. And then before you even try to solve them, define the criteria of success. So why is it that you're not tackling cleaning up this side of your desk and you're never going to? I don't know, like talk me through it. And what would success look like if you had done that? Then you've got your criteria up there for whatever product you're going to build, whatever problem you're going to solve. It has to address those key real world concerns. A lot of people refer to that as the job to be done metric. If you actually completed the job with the tool that you're building, you've succeeded.
Love that. Such a fresh approach. Brilliant. And for people listening to this show, we're going to have a bit of a mixed bag here that will be both buyers and sellers on all sides here. So to bring to life some of the things we're talking about, in what ways can integrating products into existing user workflows lead to things like increased profitability and especially for businesses, of course?
Oh, sure. So, I mean, we talk a lot about this on the seller side, but I did thank you for bringing that up. I think it's important to think about it in the buyer side as well.
Yeah.
When you have a relationship with a vendor and they're solving a problem for you, and you have the opportunity for them to solve another problem that already exists, you streamline your vendor relationships. You make it very easy to go to one person to solve any kind of concerns or questions. And then it creates a bunch more time and efficiency for you, both in terms of solving the problem itself and in terms of your vendor relationship. So for a buyer, as long as it actually addresses your concern that you're buying for, it's a slam dunk to go back to a relationship you already have. Interestingly, for a seller, it's the same way. You've got stickiness with the buyer. You have somebody who's really leaning on you to solve key problems, but they're also not going to leave as much. So that reduces your churn, your likelihood of churn. And when you're talking about customer management, you've got more senior people who have higher level of accounts because each account is worth more to you. And then you really have a direct connection to those folks that creates a pattern for your future growth.
Brilliant. And another question that might divide audiences, but I've got to ask it, is how significant is the issue of over-provisioning in cloud services? And what are the typical consequences for businesses? There's so many different arguments about all sides of this one, but I'm curious what you're seeing here.
Well, over-provisioning is really the scary word about all of that, because I have never gone into a client's company and not been assured at the beginning of the job, don't worry, we're totally optimized. I think you're not going to find anything. And I tell you, we've never found less than 20% savings, and we currently average 48%. There is so much out there to be saved that I am very happy and very proud of every company that comes to us that's already optimized. And I don't expect them to have the library of research that we have to get to so much more savings. So I think it's actually almost offensive to call it over-provisioning, because those folks have done a great job. I'm not negating that at all. I'm just saying that there are subject matter experts that can help additionally. But to put this into perspective, the highest expense for technology businesses is people. And unfortunately, recently, we've been seeing waves and waves of people being laid off because it's the only way to control cash. When you start running out of cash, you need to get it back. And so when you've got the highest expenses people, you start seeing layoffs. However, usually cloud services in a technology business go to about 20% of revenue. So let's say you're a $50 million company. You're making $50 million a year in revenue. Well, then you can expect $10 million annually to go to AWS, GCP, or Microsoft Azure. Imagine if you cut that in half and what you can do with that cash. And not only that, but it happens today. You turn off some systems today, or you reconfigure some systems today, you get the savings immediately. You don't have to pay out severance packages for the next 3 months and 6 months, And so there's much more of a fast impact on cash than on people, but we just don't. It's just so precious, our cloud hosting environments, that we aren't willing to touch them. The last thing that's really, really important to think about is that tech companies live and die on their valuations, even today, because nobody, unless you're public, you're needing to raise again. People have been delaying it. They've been putting it off because they're so worried that their valuations are bad, but their valuations are bad if their gross margins are not doing well. What goes into a gross margin? Well, a gross margin is the difference between the revenue that comes in the door and the revenue after you subtract the cost to service the client. That is customer support, that's professional services, and that's cloud services. So if you reduce those cloud services, all of a sudden your gross margin goes up and your valuation goes up and your ability to raise better cash on better terms goes up. So not only if you make changes to this, do you get more cash immediately, you stave off the need to do any layoffs, but you also get more favorable opportunities to raise money.
And outside of the office, in our home lives, we've all seen the increasing costs of the so-called subscription economy. There's a subscription for everything now. Many people cut the cord of their expensive cable packages, now find that they've got 8 or 9 subscriptions that cost more than that cable package. And when we're in the office, things are exactly the same with cloud service subscriptions too. So can you share some strategies for businesses to effectively manage those cloud service subscriptions and avoid some of those unnecessary costs that maybe they don't need?
Well, you know what? I heard a new one recently, and I love this one. And this is one of our clients actually turns off all their credit cards at the end of the year.
Really?
They reissue all their credit cards. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the year, they reissue, everyone gets all the exact same credit. Nobody's restricted from anything, but only the subscriptions that are critical to working get carried over to the next credit card. It's brilliant, right?
Yeah,
And so some kind of reset like that can be fantastic, especially for the stuff where you set it and forget it. When it comes to cloud services like AWS and Google Cloud and Azure, you do need a similar kind of reset. But unfortunately, since this is running your software, you can't really just switch the credit card. So you do need to do some kind of top to bottom analysis, whether or not you guys do it and at your, in your own environments and connect the cost, the utilization, and the configuration, or you hire somebody like Aimably to do it. You just need a reset to understand what the best way to go forward is. But then once you do that reset, the next key piece is governance. You need to make sure these things don't happen again. So that's actually one of the key deliverables we give, is not only do we say, hey, here's this one thing you can change, here's all the steps in order to do it, but here's also the process change that prevents this from happening again. So governance is clearly required to make sure that you don't spin up a bunch of cloud storage in this region that you have no need for and didn't need to access. The third after that is contracts. It's just you have to come into an agreement with a provider that says, hey, I'm going to give you this amount of business, and in exchange for that, I get a discount. Everyone from Amazon, from all of these providers, they want guaranteed revenue, and they're willing to take less cash in order to do it. And that's better for you because it's a lower expense. But always do that after you've optimized.
Fantastic advice. So we've been on quite a journey together today, looking back at those old data centers on-prem and that server in the room that sits there, nobody knows what it's doing. And I'm conscious, I'm curious, if you look back throughout your career, in your experience, how has the transition to cloud services changed the landscape for software companies, especially in terms of cost and efficiency? What have you seen here?
Well, efficiency, it's just incredible. You go from having to go out and buy provision PO hardware and then having to do all the patches on top of it, even in order to get it to work, and then to optimize it for what are we doing on this hardware. It's an incredible reduction of the time from writing code to it being live. It's incredible. On the cost side, it's really fantastic because, well, from the technology standpoint, the cost side is just you pay for what you use. You don't have to pay up front, you pay as you go, right? And it's kind of like renting versus owning a car. But actually from the CFO standpoint, it's even more transformative. You go from what's called capital expenditure, which requires planning and a huge amount of cash, to what's called operational expenditure, which is just kind of like the cost to operate a business. On financial statements, these look completely different. And so they can actually restructure how a business is valued both in the public and the private markets. Unfortunately, the thing that a lot of tech people don't understand, but CFOs do, is that CapEx is actually often more valuable. And that's because you've got an asset that you own, you theoretically could sell. You don't necessarily need to prepay for it. You could pay for it over time. And you choose when to run the maintenance on it. So you can defer that, or you can wait to replace it to a time when you have better cash. When you're talking about operational expense and a bill that's due every month, you don't get to make those decisions. And so that cash just kind of goes out the door. And so from a CFO's perspective, OpEx is a lot less flexible than CapEx. And so while it's transformative to how you would evaluate a company, it's not necessarily always for the best.
And if we were to dare to look into the future, is there any future trends or changes that you foresee in the cloud service management space that businesses should start preparing for now? I know it's almost become impossible to predict the future with the speed of everything, but in your eyes, in your view, what should businesses be preparing for now?
Yeah, it's funny because everyone's talking about AI, and I think AI is a tool to get to a new step change.
Yeah.
The first step change in the next 5 years, we're already seeing it, I think, is the complete elimination of infrastructure management. The infrastructure exists, but we're just going to be writing code and that's it. It's not going to be our job to maintain whether or not it's a, M5X large or a C5X large. That's not our job. That's Amazon's job. But in the next 15 years, I think we're on the cusp of an industrial revolution in software. We're still manufacturing software in a design process from soup to nuts on one person's desk. It's like Porsche. They're in one garage and Henry Ford hasn't showed up, right? So the next blue chip technology company is going to distinguish themselves from the rest by using their cloud services teams to plan for, optimize, and control spend after design and before deployment. So it'll be like the software equivalent of manufacturing planning, and doing so will create incredible capital flexibility in some of the largest public tech companies that for right now can't seem to get very profitable, and that will really get them there.
Wow, incredibly exciting times ahead and a powerful moment to end on. But before I do let you go, I always like to have a little fun with my guests before we go. And we have, for the podcast, a Spotify playlist of songs that might mean something to the guest, and also an Amazon wish list for books that the guests recommend. All I'm going to ask is, what would you like to leave everyone listening with and why?
The book I always come back to every time I make a change is The First 90 Days by Michael D. Watkins. It outlines exactly your strategies for getting up and going, and I just continue to return to it.
Awesome. Well, I'll get that added straight to our Amazon wish list. And we did cover so much today. So for anyone listening, just wanting to find out a little bit more information about what you do, how you might be able to help cut some of those costs, where would you like to point everyone listening?
Sure. We are Aimably. It's AIMABLY.com. And you can find me on most social platforms with the handle Claire Designs.
Well, I think we are at that time of the year where everybody's starting to think differently about the changes that they can make and improve services. And you've revealed so much today, from uncovering the hidden costs of the cloud, developing a designer's mindset to unveil customer pain points, and of course those dangers of over provisioning, and even having a chance to leave us with a good book. But more than anything, just thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Neil. This has been fantastic.
I think it's clear that the cloud, while a symbol of technological advancement and efficiency, is not without its pitfalls. I mean, we've traversed through the hidden costs lurking in its midst, but the importance of a designer's mindset in identifying and addressing customer pain points and the often overlooked dangers of over-provisioning. I think Claire has shared invaluable insights today on how businesses can navigate some of those challenges and ultimately strike a balance between cost efficiency and optimal service utilisation. But this leads us to ponder, in our pursuit of technological advancement, are we fully prepared to navigate the financial intricacies that come with it? Are there other hidden challenges in cloud computing that businesses are yet to fully comprehend? And this is where you come in. You've heard from me, you've heard from Claire today, and I invite you to share your thoughts and experiences and insights on this topic with me. And you can do that by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @NeilC.Hughes. So keep those messages and thoughts coming in, and I'll return again tomorrow bright and early. But until we speak again on the Tech Talks Daily podcast, keep questioning, keep learning, keep innovating. I'll speak to you all tomorrow.